First day of recording.
First day
of recording. Did you know what to expect? I mean,
no, I had no idea.
Been in a recording studio for singing, but never for like voiceover, right?
Yeah,
so
not for this.
They sent you the script and
sent me the script, and I went by myself that first day.
Yeah.
We recorded the entire movie
New York, right?
in one day.
That was in New York, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I called you up and I said, I'm finished. I did
the
movie in one day. It's like,
I'm like, the whole movie? I'm like, couldn't you be slower?
No, they just wanted to hear it, you know, so no, it took 2.5 years to make, but Robbie Benson came in a month later, and that's when it all clicked for me.
Yeah, so. and I don't know that a lot of people realize, but we talk about animation as being a collaborative art form. It's a very collaborative art form. And so, while as us, we didn't know what to expect, we thought, wow, I'm done one day, it's a whole movie. But they videotape the people when they're recording, and they just wanted to get something for people to hear and for the animators to look at, because when they do the hand-drawn stuff, the artists are so good that they incorporate quirks. That's what they try to do. I think that's why hand animation to me is so much more interesting than computer generated.
I hope we go back to it eventually. That's what I'm praying for. But a lot of animators lost their jobs too with the computer generation.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very true.
But Beauty and the Beast, man, it was an amazing experience. I mean, it actually took 4 years to make. They worked on it for almost 2 years before they hired the actors, just on the story, the background, the writing.
Didn't they get a whole team together?
They went to France.
Different director. Well, wasn't that the story?
Yeah, so they went to France, and then they decided that was too dark of a film. So that's when they hired Alan and Howard to make it a musical. And then Howard came up with the idea of all the little objects that are around for the comic relief. That was all Howard's idea. So it's really special, you know? Yeah. I think people don't really understand. It takes an animator an entire week to draw 5 seconds of film. And it's pretty amazing to watch them do it. I was so glad I got to watch them, a lot of them, when they're working with it. It's amazing.
So when you were recording then, and they called you back up, when did you meet Robbie, and how did that all come to be? And did you guys work together always?
Yeah, Robbie came in, they could not find a Beast. They just did not find anyone. And then Robbie actually, I don't know if I told you that, I don't think I told you this the other day. He didn't say his name on his audition. He thought they'd be prejudiced against Robbie Benson, the heartthrob of the 70s. So he changed his name and did the Beast on tape, and they said, this is the guy we want, this is the guy we want. And my agent said, oh, by the way, that's Robbie Benson. But Robbie's a genius. I mean, the guy is brilliant in so many levels: direction, writing, acting, singing. And, so it kind of all came together.
And when you guys worked together, I mean, in the old days it was difficult because literally you had tape and you had to cut it and splice it and meld it together and do all that kind of stuff. This was a digital recording, so it was a little easier. But they never did it. Did you guys ask for that? I mean,
yes, I requested that Robbie and I record together, and they hadn't let anyone do that yet at this point, but they let us do it, and I think that's what made the chemistry so special. And then consequently, our friend Linda Larkin, who's Jasmine, asked to do the same thing in Aladdin, and they let her do it. So.
And when you guys are working, do they give you freedom, or do they?
Oh yes,
you guys were acting and improvising and carrying
on. Oh yes.
Any of that?
One of my favorite
ad-libs.
Oh my God, my favorite ad-lib was cut.
Your favorite ad-lib?
And then Emma put it in the live action
version. She took it from you?
She did. It was,
and what was it?
At the very end, when he turns into the prince and she's stroking his face and says, do you think you could grow a beard? So I was glad Emma talked them into putting it in the second one.
And so did they give you guys freedom to do that? I mean, did they just say play and run with it?
I'll tell you right now, in Aladdin, that is all Robin Williams. He made up 90% of what he did.
Obviously, David was famous for putting
David August Stiers, yes.
Flowers, chocolates, promises you don't intend to keep.
Another ad-lib.
All of that was him.
Baroque, it's not Baroque, don't fix it. Those guys are so clever. They're so clever. The only thing I made up that made it to the one version with human again in it, it only came out in one version. The second version, I think it was, the extended version. But I had lived the whole reading and teaching him how to read with Romeo and Juliet. that was kind of fun.
So was Linda Wolverton involved in this process?
Totally.
Was she always
Totally.
there? Yeah.
Linda, and that's why she would go back and rewrite things. I mean, they wasted several $100,000 on the Be Our Guest number because initially they wrote it for Maurice to be there. They got it into the studio, looked at it, and said, no, this is all wrong. We got to redo it with Belle in that number. So they threw it all out, redid it. Linda had a sequence with the Beast that was too disturbing for it to be in the film, for a children's film. And it's basically, I won't go into detail, but it has to do with the way he fights the wolves. And it kind of freaked me out. I didn't like the Beast anymore when I saw him killing the wolves. I said, if I'm reacting this way, and I love the Beast, how is the audience
Beast comes and saves Belle, she gets on Philippe and rides away. End of movie. Cut to credits. That's not the way that's supposed to go.
I mean, I'm not a wimp. I like martial arts, but this is on martial arts on steroids. The Beast and the wolves. So anyway, Linda rewrote that, but it was amazing. They're such perfectionists, you know, at every single thing.
Yeah. So what was it? You were living in New York at the time, right? Shortly after I started working in Phantom in LA. And so we spent some time in LA. Do you remember your first trip to the studio? And what
in
was,
LA?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
You remember walking in and into Walt Disney Studios? What was that like? I mean,
it was amazing.
That must have been really cool, huh?
The history. And you know, his office is exactly as he left it the day he died, including the music on the piano, all of his pictures that are up, all of his books. And what immediately went to me was there were 4 photographs of Ed Wynn in his office. You remember the wonderful, brilliant comedic actor? You know, I love to laugh. You know. Well, Ed Wynn, I think Walt loved him so much because I was told by Howard Green, every movie Ed Wynn was in was a huge hit. If he wasn't in it, it wasn't.
That's a good reason to have his photo on your wall, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you like meet all the animators? What was it like, Mark Henn and James Baxter and all of that stuff?
Yes, well, we got to work with them pretty closely, which was great. You know, James Baxter, he was the head animator for Belle in the first like 2 to 3 scenes, and then he got really sick with mono and had to go back to England and get well. So then Mark Henn took over, but they were on the phone constantly and agreeing on everything.
Mark Henn just coming off of Ariel, right?
No, that Glenn Keane. Mark Henn did Little Mermaid, but Glenn Keane was Ariel animator.
All right.
If I could do a whole night on Glenn Keane, I hope you guys get a seminar with him one day. It'll blow your mind what he can do. It's brilliant.
So did Belle change? I mean, obviously the script evolved a little bit. Did the way that Belle looked evolve as well? I mean,
yes. I mean, the initial drawings of Belle, she was almost unapproachable. She was so perfectly beautiful. It looked like, I don't know, Angelina Jolie at 16. I mean, the perfect chiseled features, everything perfect. And then they decided to make her a little more, the brown eyes that sometimes I'd read in my eyes, and said, we need to do this. We need to bring a little Paige into this. But I got to tell you, it was really weird going into the office of the animators, and you're seeing, you know, Audrey Hepburn and Natalie Wood and Liz Taylor, and then my funny picture on the bottom. It's like
take that picture down. That is not the logo there, right? Okay.
So it was really fun the other day, though, Michael. We need to get some news stories.
I know. No, we're not. I know that Paige, when we saw the film the first time, and obviously we know her and her sisters, there were expressions and moments where we just went, boom, that's, you know, that's...
Well, in the opening scene,
that's Paige, right there. It was really interesting.
Village. My sister's cracking up laughing at them. It's not supposed to be funny, Lisa. It's like, but, you know, they know me.
There's times to laugh, and this is not one of them, okay? But, okay, stop. Okay. All right. And so did you see... like early stuff? Did you see it? I mean, did they show you bits and pieces of what they were animating, or? Yes,
they did. Not to the extent of the New York. Did we tell you about the New York premiere? That was the semi. No. Well, it was. They brought the film, which was about halfway animated. The other part was hand drawn still. So they were going to show it to the New York critics. Well, I got to tell you, Jeffrey Katzenberg, Don Henn, and myself were all about to have a heart attack. We were so nervous about this.
Yeah,
I know the New York critics. I've been, you know,
This was at,
critiqued by them since I was 17.
This was at Lincoln Center, in New York. They decided to do a big screening of it, I guess because of the success of Little Mermaid. And you know, people I don't think had any real idea of the way animation came together. And so this was sort of the film had pieces of some storyboard. I mean, literally storyboard, and it had some just pencil drawings, and it had some partially animated, and it had some sections that were fully animated. And so they decided. So basically,
they did this to educate the critics and let them see what the process really is and how long it takes.
How much work it takes.
And they knew it's either going to be a huge success in New York or it's going to be a nightmare. And so I don't think there'd ever be an in-between reaction from those critics. Well, lo and behold,
Don Hahn and Jeffrey Katzenberg from the screen.
They were pacing.
Oh my God, we're out of our minds. What are we doing? We're going to know. Stop. Is it too much? Stop this. But
you know what? They applauded after my opening number. They applauded Be Our Guest, and at the end, the tough New Yorkers, they stood up for 10 minutes and wouldn't stop cheering and insisted that we all come on stage. And I knew that night that Beauty and the Beast is going to be a classic.
Was that the?
That's the night I knew.
That was the little bulb going off. Boom.
Yes.
Hey, this is going to be okay.
More than okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The opening number.
Howard, you know the opening Belle song, Howard didn't want to do it. He said it's way too long and the audiences were never going to accept 7-minute opening number. And Alan fought him on that. Yeah. And our directors, Kirk and Gary, said, just wait.
Alan said, yeah, it's a 12-minute opening number.
Yeah.
They're going to throw us out of the studio, right? Howard was.
Yeah. Alan loved it. He wanted it to be longer. But it turned out to be kind of
that had never been done before.
Yeah, it was all
that had never been done.
A lot of other films followed in that path.
All the prologue happened in the first, 8-10 minutes, and you just followed the number, and boom, there it was.
I think it's one of the best things that Howard's ever written. That opening number.
So, Human Again.
Human Again was Howard's favorite song. I don't know if you guys saw it in the live action. I'm assuming, yeah. He was really upset when that was cut. And in those days, you couldn't go past 90 minutes in their minds. They thought that children wouldn't sit still long enough, past that. So that was one of the ones that got cut. And luckily, we got to put it back into the second version where I'm teaching him to read. And then, of course, the Broadway version. And every time I hear it, I cry because I just see Howard's little face, It's just, it's something.
It's interesting that they only... released that segment. It's the formula, right?
Right.
Of not being too long, one ballad, they were very specific on it because those were sort of the old rules of the classics from animation. And then when they released it for the first anniversary was when they included Human Again in the film, right?
Yes.
But that's the only version that's ever had it in it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder why, because we love that particular
I know they were very torn at Disney. Some people loved it, and some people thought it was a big mistake to even put it on the second version. But it depends on who you ask.
Yeah. Okay.
Ask me, I love it.
So, Howard Ashman. I mean, can you talk about your relationship with Howard at all? Don Hahn just released another documentary called Howard. And Paige still can't watch it without breaking into tears.
I haven't seen the whole new one yet.
Yeah.
Don's been like, when are you going to watch it, Paige? You're in it. But,
anybody here seen it? Has anybody seen it?
I don't think it's actually out.
It's played in film festivals and that kind of thing. I don't think it's been generally released.
Well, Howard, I just have on a pedestal.
I saw on that little thing, in the thing with Howard. Okay, take 2,110, and you go, wow, really?
No, it wasn't that many exactly. No. I've seen
that footage from Don. There's the thing he put together. She goes, little town is a stop, little town stop, little town is a stop, little town stop. And it's just like her smoke's coming out of her ears, stop.
Well, I went back to the rule of thumb. I should have become live theater, and I was singing little town, it's a quiet village. It was all like too big.
Another Ethel Merman moment. What was it? Did you like like go to Alan Menken's house and work on music at his piano, or who did you work with?
Yeah, there's a bittersweet story on that.
Yeah.
And I don't usually tell them, so I don't think you probably heard this. But we were getting ready to do the press tour, and they wanted the song "Beauty and the Beast" to be sung on for the press on the Good Morning Show and all that stuff. And Angie said, "I don't want to do it. I really don't want to do it." She was very nervous about singing that song live, and she was recording. She was doing other films and stuff. So I did it, but I didn't know.
Murder, She Wrote, probably. That's
yeah, she was still doing Murder, She Wrote. Yeah. But Alan said, "Come over to my house. I want to teach you, the Beauty and the Beast song," because I'd only just heard snippets of it, and I sang through it.
Alan Menken called you up. You said, "Oh no, Alan, I'm sorry, I'm busy today."
As he sends a limo to take me to the country. I'm like, "Oh, wow, this is nice." But I walk in and we start working on it and we start singing, and Alan gets a little choked up, and I'm like, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, you're the only person. Howard hasn't heard anyone sing it yet."
Oh, wait, really?
Except me when they were writing it. So we called up Howard in the hospital, and I sang it to him over the phone, and Howard just said, "Love you, love you, love you." That's what he said. So that was my last time I got to really speak with him. I mean, a few months later through the headset. I think you all know that story of the Barbra Streisand thing he wanted, and new and a bit alarming. He kept saying Streisand, Streisand in my headset. And, but as I said on the film, I do believe he's seen the movie.
Because he never saw it in the fully. He had passed away before the film fully opened and got the kind of response that it got. But
and that's why I still love singing the title song. When we do concerts and whatever, it's Howard. It's a homage tribute to Howard Ashman.
Yeah, you sang that song all over, didn't you?
Yeah.
You traveled around singing that with Alan and did Robbie do those with you as well? I know you did what? Dennis Miller, you did Larry King. Everybody remember Larry King?
Oh, yeah, Larry King. He's brilliant. He made me look so good. I couldn't believe it. It's like wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Robbie didn't do those.
No?
No, it's kind of silly. He should have.
Hmm. And so, what was it like working with Howard? I mean, was he just like...
Oh, the energy.
Was he
oh, my God. Talk about what you said about me. He's a sonic boom. I mean, he's like, everywhere, bouncing and running around with all his energy. And here he is, like, dying. And he's like...
Did anybody know that in the course of this film?
Yes,
I mean, Alan obviously knew that.
Yeah.
At what point did you guys go, something's not right here? Was there a specific thing that happened, or did he just not show up one day and, you guys were told, or how did that all happen?
We all kind of guessed it, too.
Yeah?
And we kind of guessed it. And that was also when Michael Eisner changed the rules for the spouses of his gay employees, that he covered health care for the spouses as well. And all the other companies followed, where they would be covered. So that was Howard that got him, Michael Eisner gave him that idea to do that.
Was he, like, fun to work with, or was it tough working with him? I mean,
both.
He could be a real stickler for detail,
but he makes it also funny, And if I do something really bad, he'll make some really funny wisecrack, and I just start laughing, and then all the tension goes away, But he's loved
rumor had it he could do every character in the show better than the people they
His
they
Belle
hired.
is amazing.
Howard Ashman, voice of Belle.
It really was. Talking about laughing, oh my gosh, he had us in stitches sometimes.
Yeah.
It was really fun. Yeah.
And when he did pass away, was the film 100% finished at that point in time? It hadn't been opened, it hadn't been released, but
it was weeks before the final touches were put on it. Yeah.
Okay, so it was really his finished product.
Oh yeah. Oh, no question.
And was he the driving force behind it? Was he there has to be. We talk, animation being collaborative, but there has to be one guy that says yes or no. Was that Howard?
That was Howard Ashman and
Alan, or was that Jeffrey?
No.
Did it all together?
Little Mermaid happened because Howard Ashman and Alan Menken begged Walt Disney to let them make their movie. Howard and Alan put their own money into Little Mermaid. So after the hit of Little Mermaid, they gave him full reins to do whatever he wanted. So yes, Howard. Everything in the movie was Howard. He and Linda were There were like one. They thought as one person. And
how much did the script change? I mean, how much?
Really, the only thing
did it change?
a
lot, or is it just a word here, or was it a whole? Obviously they had to cut it, so some scenes just got yanked and put aside.
Yeah, really,
did it change a lot?
No, honey. The only ones, like I mentioned to you, was the wolf scene and the Be Our Guest. That's it. But being hand drawn, it took a long time.
It takes a long time.
And the sequence in the ballroom, that generated computer generation. That was the invention of it. That was the first time they'd done that. And so now you see it a lot, but that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, the chandelier moving in the room moving, and
that's Don Hahn's brilliance.
And so, what was the recording process like for the album, for the songs? What was that like? You did that at the
that was amazing.
RCA.
We're in New York and
New York
full orchestra. And the ensemble of singers, guys, you would not believe. Big Broadway stars, Judy Kay, and all
look at the chorus,
singing in the chorus because they wanted to be a part of it. I mean, it was like who's who of Broadway theater.
And, that shows I think Howard and Alan's connection to New York, because they wanted a chorus of amazing singers, so they just called up all their people that they knew that they had worked with in New York, right?
They did.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, I mean, they always saw it as a Broadway show, and all the principals, we'd all been Broadway actors.
So was that recorded like a live Broadway show rather than is that how?
It's 25th anniversary, just a couple of years ago. We were in New York, and Alan was begging Angie to sing Beauty and the Beast again, and she came up to me and said, "Paige, he's playing it way too slow. I don't have the line in my voice anymore. I can't do it." And I said, "Yes, you can, Angie. You can do it." And she said,
Angie, I've been hearing this for 30 years. You can sing this song.
I said,
it's
Angie,
really okay.
She said, "Well, what do I do? He's playing it too slow." I said, "You just speed up to your tempo, and he will follow you. Trust me. He will follow you." And
he might not be happy about it, but he will follow you. What was it like for the cast and everybody who had only probably heard it with a piano, to suddenly hear the New York Philharmonic playing that score?
It was a very emotional day.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Robbie and I both had tears running down our faces.
Who was conducting that day? Do you remember?
David Friedman.
David Friedman.
And David Friedman.
Michael Kaz did who did the arrangements for all of this?
That was you just went maybe go blank.
No. I said Michael Kaz. No.
Do you guys know? Anybody know? I'm trying to think. You know what? If you give me my phone back,
I know.
He took my phone because he said I'm going to raise the phone bill while I'm on this ship. I have my phone. I can do it right now. Thanks, Michael.
My wife likes to stream NBA basketball games, okay? You know what it costs to stream an NBA basketball game on this ship? It's a lot, okay?
I admit it, I'm an NBA fanatic. It was Danny True orchestration.
I'm about to get a second job just to pay to stream that NBA game.
Michael, it was...
You gotta draw the line.
It was Sterman and Danny True.
There you go.
Danny
Thank you very much. There you go.
Danny True. Michael's right.
So did you record in the sequence of the show? Did you do the opening number first? That was probably the biggest number. So and
actually,
did you
I think Richard was before me doing the his tavern song.
Okay.
The Gaston song.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it was an all-day thing. It was fun.
Okay. And so you guys have worked on it now for like 2 years, right? And bits and pieces, but never seen the full thing other than the Lincoln Center.
Lincoln Center.
And so what was it like to premiere it? Where did it premiere? Where did you go? What was it?
Well, I did a few premieres, but the one that meant the most to me was at Disney World because I'm a native Floridian.
The big premiere was in LA, I would assume, right?
Yes, in LA. Yeah.
Did they do it as Chinese or was El Capitan open then?
But in Florida, I had all my family with me. Except my mom was too sick to come. My stepdad and my sisters, my brothers, and I sat literally right behind Alan. And
my family was there.
And of course, all your family, yeah. The Waltons, yes. Michael's family was the Waltons. They really are.
Hey, John.
Over the years, she's like, your family is so crazy and eccentric. And I'm like, well, yes, my mother stepmother was Auntie Ming. What do you expect? My stepfather is a famous architect. I mean, there's crazy people. I was the mom to my mom. When she got out of hand, I was like, Mom, it's time for you to calm down now and go to bed. But anyway, Alan was sitting right in front, and after my opening number...
Was the whole creative team always there and all of this? Was everybody there? Was the whole...
Everyone was there, but it was split up. And
Robbie
Alan and his wife were right in front of me. Robbie was right behind us.
Okay.
And after the opening song, I see Alan's shoulders go... he started bursting into tears. So I just kind of came behind him and hugged him, and we both kind of cried through that whole one. But it was very special.
That was one of those, as only Disney can do, right? I mean, you walk into the theater and you watch this movie, and then they have the big party afterwards, right? And what was...
Oh my gosh, you guys. They had built the entire village, Belle's village. It was like a mile long, exactly.
To walk out and you're in the village. I mean, it was like, wow, how does that happen?
Shop, all of the little things, it was really amazing. That's one night I wanted to put on the Belle dress.
That was
I should have that night.
Absolutely.
Now I'm too old. I could go out and say, I'm Belle's grandmother. I told her everything she knows. Oh, gosh.
So did you know, I mean, obviously, animation had sort of gone through a big dip, and so Little Mermaid sort of raised the bar a little bit, and Beauty and the Beast raised the bar a little bit more.
Don Hahn actually knew it from the beginning.
Did he?
Don Hahn said after the success of Little Mermaid, he says, this is going to change it forever. And he was right, you know, and he produced Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, and among many others. He's got the new Maleficent coming out really soon. Maleficent 2,
and
he's been telling me about it.
In the live action.
Yes, he was associate producer on live action, so I could send messages back to Emma and her back to me, and that was fun. So.
Did you know or have any idea that, 30 years later you'd be floating on a ship in the Atlantic Ocean, talking about Beauty and the Beast? I mean, any concept of that at all? Did you have, really? I mean, seriously, did you have any glimpse that would be a thing? I mean, normally in the business you do a project
and it's done.
And it's done. You walk away from it. If you get a press, you get maybe a year out of it, maybe a year. I mean, here we are. We're 30 years down the road here. Any idea that was?
Thank you, God.
Thank you, Mickey.
No, thank you, Mickey. No, I didn't think it would be like this. I thought maybe for 10 years or so I'd be, doing little Comic-Cons and whatever and talking about this, but 30 years later, no. But they're again back to Howard and Alan. I mean, the princesses changed. Thank God. Belle and Ariel too to a certain degree, but they changed the way that the world looks at the princesses, that they're not victims, they're not martyrs, they're independent, strong women. And Belle was actually considered the oldest of any of them. So if you think about it, and Howard would constantly tell me this, at the period of the Beast, Belle was supposed to be 21. Now that would have been an old maid in those days, because you got married as a teenager, sometimes as young as 14. So that's another part of the outcast of Belle in the opening scene, which is hard for us to imagine, because